Hey everyone, and welcome back to my web show, Coffee and Conversations. I am so happy that you are here, and I am thrilled about my guest for today's show. I am so excited to be interviewing Veronica Garnett. Veronica is a health at every size, fat positive, registered dietitian, and certified culinarian with over 17 years of experience in the food and nutrition field. For most of her career, Veronica has worked with marginalized and vulnerable populations, particularly Black and Latinx and LGBTQIA folks living with food insecurity, substance abuse, and mental health issues, as well as chronic diseases such as HIV/AIDS, heart disease, hypertension, diabetes, kidney disease, and eating disorders. Currently, in her virtual private practice and consulting business, Veronica supports plus-sized, larger-bodied, fat folks and developing a healthy relationship with food and their bodies. She also supports professionals in providing multiculturally competent, weight-inclusive, and social justice-informed care. In addition to her private practice, Veronica is a bit of a jack-a of all trades. She is the host of the forthcoming online cooking show, Diasporadical Kitchen, which aims to dismantle fatphobia, diet culture, and other systems of oppression while celebrating foods from the African diaspora. She is the co-founder of Reclaiming Our Plate, a dietitian collective-led community of Black folks critically examining and divesting from diet culture and its inherent anti-Blackness. Veronica is the founder of Black Adventuristas, an organization with the mission to support the well-being of Black women by connecting them to each other and to adventure through various experiences in their local communities and beyond. Veronica is also the vision and strategy leader for the Association for Size Diversity and Health, the organization that trademarked Health at Every Size, and aims to end weight discrimination in healthcare. On top of all of that, she is also training to become a certified death doula. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Veronica Garnett.
Hi, Dr.
Hi, Veronica. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show. When I thought about guests for the show, I thought about you immediately because I really, really am impressed by all that you are doing.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. Like when you asked to join, I'm like, I can't not join.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So, Veronica, let's start. Tell us what made you become a dietitian.
Okay, so you want the whole backstory? Okay, so when I was in high school, I really wanted to go to culinary school and become a chef. But I come from a very educated, degreed up family, and blue collar work, or that kind of labor intensive job or that kind of career was kind of frowned upon. And so I was steered in the direction you have to go to college and a more traditional route. So I ended up studying dietetics because I figured nutrition is close enough to culinary arts, right? But they're two separate worlds. I feel like now, when I first started out, there were definitely two separate worlds, but I think there's a movement for culinary nutrition and all of that. So that was one reason why I chose dietetics. But the other reason is that I was trying to justify settling for that choice. I don't want to call it settling now, but anyway, I kind of settled for it, and I was like, well, I have a lot of family members. What black person does not have a family member with high blood pressure, diabetes? I have a family history, a paternal family history of cancer. And so I was like, well, maybe I can learn about the information, have the knowledge, tools or whatever to help my family and community. But also a big undercurrent of everything was that so I've been larger bodied. I was a fat kid since I was 5 years old, and I got a lot of negative messaging around my body size and weight and shape and all of that. And so I figured this is this is a tool that I can use to like fix what I thought was wrong with me. I can learn how to like shrink my body, shrink myself. And so I came up with all those justifications. And so ended up, studying nutrition and dietetics at Howard University. And it's been a long journey, but here we are. I'm finally doing the work that I like love, all those things that you listed in my bio.
Yes.
That's very exciting. Yeah.
Your super impressive bio. Now, start, Veronica, by telling us, what does health at every size mean? Because I love that phrase, and I'm not surprised it's a trademark phrase because it is really that amazing. Tell us what it means, though.
So health at every size, it's kind of like multi-pronged, but it's like an ever-evolving approach or like paradigm to treating people of all sizes, particularly people in larger bodies, that's not weight-centered. Like if you go to a lot of doctors, or if a fat person goes to, and when I say fat, that is not a pejorative, it's just a descriptor. Like I identify as fat. So yeah, but when fat people go to the doctors, like everything that they might be experiencing, like I was in a space, in a clubhouse room where it was mostly fat Black femmes, and they were talking about their experiences going to the doctor. And one person was like, they broke their pinky toe or something. And the doctor was like, it's because, because of their fatness, because of their weight, that was the problem, instead of like, okay, you broke your toe.
Examining them.
Right. Or one person had like nasal congestion, and that is like blamed on their fatness. So everything is like blamed on weight and size. And like, it's very, like in healthcare, it's very weight centered, which ends up being very harmful for fat patients. They don't get the care that they need. And so health at every size is, it's one about like providing, compassionate, weight inclusive care to people of all sizes. But on the other hand, it's also trying to kind of dismantle fat phobia, diet culture, and like our culture's obsession with thinness. And it promotes size acceptance and body inclusivity. But it's ever evolving, and it does involve like on the individual level. So it's kind of like systemic and individual. On the individual level, it does promote like health enhancing behaviors, like movement that feels good to you, eating that is like flexible and not like a diet, but eating that's appropriate and healthy for you based on your needs. It's like a multi-pronged, pretty expansive, holistic look at health and wellness.
I wanted to have you on the show because a large segment of my audience is Black women. And in my work as a therapist, I found that one of the eating disorders that disproportionately affects Black women is binge eating disorder. And in fact, Black women are the largest population of individuals suffering with binge eating disorder. What are your thoughts about that as a dietitian and as a person who is working to really ensure that society is much more inclusive of bodies that are different and bodies that are larger? What do you think about that Black women are disproportionately impacted, and why do you think that is, and just your whole spiel on that?
Yeah, let's see. What do I want to say about Black women and eating disorders? I guess just in general. I feel like, I know there's this misconception that Black women, Black people in general don't get eating disorders.
Yes.
And like when you think of eating disorders, it's this image of a thin, white, woman, young woman, able-bodied,
very thin,
like all those things.
Yep.
It's seen as like a thin, white woman's disease or illness, but we know that that's absolutely not the truth. So I'm not surprised that like Black women are experiencing like higher levels of bulimia or other like forms of disordered eating, because like we live in a fat phobic society that's also anti-Black. And if you have any other marginalized identity, that has a huge impact on the way that you're treated, how you're treated in healthcare, how your body is like, Black women's bodies have been, like picked apart and like,
generations,
Hottentot Venus.
Yep.
Or like our features are ugly or ghetto or whatever, like when it's on us, but if it's on another, like it's just so much, so much stuff when it comes to like body image and perception and stuff like that. And so also like if, so eating disorders are a mental illness with like real physical physical manifestations. And it's hard to be, it's just hard to be a Black woman with multiple marginalizations in this country. And like bulimia, or not bulimia, binge eating disorder, like some people will binge to cope. It's a coping mechanism.
Absolutely.
It may not be the healthiest coping mechanism, but it is one. And if you don't have other resources or tools, if you're also like swimming in this stew of diet culture and fat phobia, like it's just, I think this society actually ends up like promoting, these type of behaviors, So yeah, I think I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay, no problem. Now, when you say fat, you said earlier it's not a pejorative. You are using it as a description. Is it okay for society to use the word fat when describing people? Is that okay?
Is it okay? So it depends on, I think it depends on the individual. Like I know, like if a thin person were to refer to fat people as fat, it could, to some people, it might land as like inappropriate,
okay,
or triggering if it's been, especially if it's been hurled, like fat has been hurled as an insult, which it often is. It's conflated with, like laziness and ugly and, all these things. Like people will say like, or if I say like, oh, I'm fat, they're like, oh, you're not fat, you're beautiful. And I'm like, I didn't say it wasn't. I said it was fat. I didn't say it wasn't beautiful.
I didn't say it wasn't beautiful.
But I'm just thinking about my own personal experiences. I mean, I would just prefer people, like if you're going to use it just as a descriptor, that's fine with me. And there is like in the fat community and fat spaces, people have reclaimed that word.
Okay.
And I'd rather people say fat than like kind of dance around it.
Okay.
Dance around it. And also, like I remember I worked at a eating disorder facility very briefly. And like fat phobia is really real in eating disorder spaces.
Absolutely.
So,
yes.
But someone that I worked with, I noticed some fat phobia popping up in like group spaces, and I'm like, does anyone ever say anything about like the fat phobia? And one of the clinicians was like, oh, I didn't even say that word. But I'm like, that is kind of fat phobic in and of itself, that you can't
fat
even
in and of itself. You can't even say fat.
Yeah. So you can say it. But some people would be sensitive or could be triggered by it. So like when I put in my bio that I work with larger body, plus size / fat folks, it's like whatever term you identify most closely with, like that's what I want to be respectful of that and like use that. But for me, like personally, fat is okay.
Okay. You mentioned, thank you for that, Veronica. You mentioned earlier something that I really think is important for us to go back to. You said that society is very diet sensitive and restrictive, etc. Do you think that is just a Western issue? Is that just an American issue? Or do you think that is a global issue?
I think with like increasing like globalization and connection, through social media and all of that, I think our Western ideals and ideas and notions of bodies, like what bodies are valuable and acceptable, I think that has like it has it spanned the globe. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Like but it's interesting, like when people immigrate here, or whenever these Western ideals about thinness and health and wellness and like all of that permeate these other cultures, like there's an increase in like body dissatisfaction and disordered behaviors around food and eating and all of that.
Thank you so much for that, Veronica. I really, really appreciate having you on the show today. I have to have you back because we have to talk about cooking as well, since you are an amazing, amazing chef. So I definitely want to hear about that and your cooking show. Any final words for our listeners today?
Okay, well, I said this on a podcast that I was on. It just aired yesterday, but I filmed it like over the summer.
Okay.
I ended that podcast by saying that like you're right where you're supposed to be. Like you're right where you're supposed to be on this journey. It's like I think we get all caught up thinking about where we're supposed to be, or like the way things are supposed to look and feel. And I'm supposed to like have this when you're talking about, people's wellness plan or fitness and eating plans and all of that, like fell off, it's all good. Like if it's like wherever you are right now, like it's okay. You're okay. You're right where you're supposed to be. And you can always choose something different. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you, Veronica. This was super helpful. I hope you guys got a bit of all of Veronica's great tips, all her great information, and I will be having her back on the show soon. Veronica, thank you so much for educating us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Letitia.
You're welcome.
Pleasure.
Bye.